Good evening. This meeting is called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
roll call. President Gianni, here. Vice President Trombley, here. Treasurer Connor,
Here.
Secretary Hunter,
Here.
Mr. View,
Here.
Mr. Kraus,
Here.
Mr. Anderson.
Here.
All are present. Are there any additions or deletions to this evening's agenda?
Yes, Mr. President. I spoke last meeting that there were some things that I had brought up through the years, and the board has discussed them. I'd like to add one action item, which we've discussed. It was in regard to the protocol for the cheerleading and wrestling rooms. The board had Dr. Gray and I work on some protocols. They've been in place for, how long, Dr. Gray?
A little over a year.
And they're working about 95%. We still have to work on a few things, but we want to get them in place. So I'd like to add that on as an action item. Also, there are two resolutions. The first resolution has to do with keeping us out of financial debt. Some of the reasons why we got into this debt, we started eating away at these line items, and they're in regard to line items for classroom books, technology, preventative maintenance, capital outlay, and also an athletic budget. That's the second resolution. It's reestablishing the following items for the 2015-2016 school year. The second resolution is to eliminate all Brighton student and all Brighton community members' user fees and participation fees starting in the 2015-2016 school year.
Those are already agenda.
I think he's referring to something different.
Yes. I'm referring to all fees. To give you some examples, Mr. Kraus. We have drama classes and we have musicals, and the kids have to pay a fee. If they don't pay the fee, they don't participate unless they come forward and say they don't have the money available. A lot of kids won't do that, so it kind of puts them in an awkward position. So
I see that the wrestling room policies were at place. Do you have the other additional resolution items to present to the board? Would we be able to look at the document to discuss at the time if it was added to the agenda?
and what would you, I'm doing it as a resolution.
Right. I just
It's
wanted.
been discussed through the years.
Right. I just was wondering if there was a document for each board member to review at the time of,
So
If-
we could discuss
so we could
it.
all discuss it.
Now, we can make a motion on the resolution. It can be seconded, we have a discussion at that time.
Okay?
I'll open the
I-
discussion.
I understand. So, and that's perfectly fine other
I'll
than,
give a background on all the details.
it's just more difficult for each board member to
I understand that.
review it. Now, just to make sure we have everything in order, we need to make a motion to amend the agenda, and what are the items or go ahead and make your motion.
Okay, I make a motion to add 3 items to the agenda. The first one is an action item, and that is to approve the user's guide for the use of the Brighton cheerleading room and Brighton wrestling room. Second one is a resolution to reestablishing the following budget line items starting in the 2015-2016 school year. Classroom books, $250,000 per year. Technology, $300,000 per year. Preventative maintenance, $500,000 per year. Capital outlay, $1 million per year. And athletic budget, $1.2 million per year. Of course, some of these figures are already in the budget.
That's not part of the motion.
Yeah. The third one is a resolution to eliminate all Brighton student and Brighton community member user fees and participation fees, starting in 2015, 2016.
That is the motion, moved by Mr. Hugh. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Hugh, supported by Mr. Conley. Any discussion? Okay.
Yeah, no,
Mr. Kraus?
Do we have a fee schedule that we're looking at? I mean, I think to your point, Mr. Fiani, is we're voting on something we don't even know what we're discussing. I mean, is there a fee schedule published that, we can reference that says, here's the things we're gonna waive? Because, we're still a deficit district, and I'm very nervous to waive any fees at this point in time until we have a proposed budget for 2015, 2016 school year. I think we've jumped the gun ahead before, for example, on the, pay to play.
Pay to participate, yeah.
We took that away, and then, right after that, we had to add the money back in because it was at a detriment to our budget. So I'd like to see what this costs, and I'd also like to see a financial analysis from Maria's team that says, here's the impact to our budget to waive all these fees.
Yeah. And just to clarify, what Mr. Hughes is referring to is not the elimination of.
No, I know, but I'm just saying the rest of his fees, it's a generic group of fees, and I don't know what they are. Well, I don't even know what they all are. I don't know if anybody knows what they all are, and then it's a cost to the district, and we don't know what the impact is. So I'd like to see a little bit more financial data before we make a decision like that. That's my opinion.
Okay, we will be voting now on the amendment of the agenda. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Fiani? No. Mr. Tremblay?
No.
Mr. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Minor?
No.
Mr. Hugh?
Yes.
Mr. Kraus?
No.
Mr. Anderson?
No.
The motion fails 5-2. Is there a motion to is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Mr. Conley,
Support.
supported by Mrs. Minor. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Motion carries 6-1. At this time, we have the Shining Stars. Dr. Gray.
First tonight, we have Colleen Deven, the administrator in charge at the Bridge Alternative High School with a great Shining Star. Colleen?
Thank you. Mr. Van Noot? Mr. Van Noot is our art teacher, and we're here to honor some of our art students this evening who are here. I'd like to thank the board for honoring Jake Van Noot and our 5 art students. They participated in the Youth Connection Services art exhibit to bring awareness to homelessness back in November in Livingston County. Mr. Van Noot has been our art teacher for 4 years at the Bridge. I'm always amazed at his ability to inspire students, his passion for art, and his passion for young people in general. It's clear that Mr. Van Noot cares for the Bridge students through his dedication and willingness to go above and beyond. The students that participated in the Youth Connection Services Homelessness Art Exhibit who are here this evening are Rob Mellon, Megan Muirhead-Love, Anna Bazinet, and John Hedges. Taylor Herman could not be with us this evening. But not only did they participate in this wonderful event, also some awards were given to our students. Taylor Herman, who's not here this evening, was awarded Best in Show. Rob Mellon received first place. John Hedges received third place, and Megan Muirhead-Love received an honorable mention. Do we have any of the art here this evening? Oh, So congratulations to the bridge artists and their teacher, Mr. V.
On the second Shining Star tonight, we're going to have to wait just a little bit. We have our members of the Quiz Bowl that will be here shortly. Our third one comes from the district, and it's a Shining Star to Miles View and Bill Anderson for their years of service on the Board of Education. It's a thankless job, obviously. You guys have put in lots and lots and lots of time, especially during some very difficult times for the district, and it helped us lead this district out of those difficult times into what I would call, heading into the future, a very prosperous time. So in your name, you will have to let us know where you want to donate. We have a $50, I would say, coupon that you donate to a particular school in the district, media center, and they will be able to pick out books for grade levels in those particular schools. So all you have to do is let us know the names, and we give these awards to you tonight with our sincerest appreciation. So thank you very much. That's all we have this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Gray. At this time, if anybody wishes, they are free to leave before we head into the business portion of the evening. At this time, we are opening the first call to the public. If anybody wishes to speak, please step forward to the microphone. You will have 3 minutes, and please state your name as well.
Hi, Ellen Lafferty, Brighton teacher and president of the BEA. I just want to reiterate what Mr. Krause had said earlier tonight. I know on the agenda you have the elimination of the senior center fees and also the elimination of pay to participate fees. And although the senior center fees are listed, the impact on the budget is not, the overall total number is not there, and nor is the pay to participate. And as Mr. Krause had mentioned, this affects next year's budget, so it seems to be putting the cart before the horse. We don't know what that budget is going to look like, nor do you have an overall number to look at of what that impact is. Although it's altruistic in nature, it's kind of jumping ahead of things right now. I encourage this board that it shouldn't be a for-action item without that information to discuss. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak at this time? The first call to the public is closed. Board reports. Are there any board reports this evening? Oh, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. I know the tradition is the donation of books, and quite frankly, kind of keeping in the way I like to do things, I went out and bought my own books with my money. And I have 3 books. They're kind of unusual. One's called Grossology. The other one's called Animal Grossology, and the third one is Grossology and You. Now, they were written by a person named Sylvia Bramsey. Now, when I knew Sylvia in 7th grade, she went by her middle name, Carol. I can't understand why she didn't go by Sylvia back then. It was interesting. I ran into her. She lives out in California now, but I think I ran into her at a class reunion, and she talked about the fact that she really got turned on to science when she took Mrs. Johannesson's chemistry class at Athens High School in Troy. And she looked at me and said, you know, you were the lab assistant in that class. And I remember all the time you'd come over and work with us on the experiments and whatever. And it was interesting because Mrs. Johannesson was a fantastic chemistry teacher at Athens High School. And unfortunately, Mrs. Johannesson passed away about a year ago. But what makes it kind of interesting to me, so here I'm bringing in, you know, a teacher inspiring the person to go out and create science books. Now the interesting part was, and I know Mrs. Johansson didn't know this, in that same class, I was in the office, and I noticed that she had nominated me to go to Boys State, run by the American Legion. And that's kind of what turned me into really focus on public work. So that same teacher who turned on a person to writing science books also turned on a person to take a very different career path. And believe me, I used to do a lot of work in the science labs in those days. So, as my tribute to my high school chemistry teacher, I think these books probably belong in Maltby because I figure Maltby boys are probably the most likely to pick up a book about grossology and you. So that's my donation to Maltby, and like I said, it's a bit to my old chemistry teacher. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. That's very generous of you. Are there any additional board reports or correspondence this evening? Mr. Conway?
Yeah, a couple items, but we'll get some Miles items here. This is his latest poster he's been working on for the Brighton Wrestling, and I believe this spans from the early 70s, 60s, 69. When did you start your wrestling?
That's not me.
No, I know that. No, this is what you've been working on. No, this is not you, Mal, but you started your wrestling work at Brighton High in
67, 66.
So we have a big supporter of Brighton athletics here. And as a school board member sitting next to him, I'm proud to have sat next to him. In fact, Miles drafted me for this position and came calling one day and said, you have to go on the Brighton Area School Board and we need to get this thing going, and it's a great school and we can make it even better, quote. And so I'm proud of Miles with his wrestling commitment. I was in some of the rooms the other day and he took me around. The students were doing their exercises, and it's very serious business. These wrestlers take it very seriously, and it's nice to be involved in that. So thank you, Miles, for those many years of doing that. And the other thing I ran across was, I have a whole stack of Miles things here, but I'm going to go through them quickly. So
We don't have time for that.
well, we'll have to see. But anyhow, Miles has protected these First Amendment rights for these students, and you can say anything you want, you can do whatever you want. I've known Miles for 52 years, virtually my whole life, and we've disagreed on plenty of things, but there's absolutely no disagreement that Miles has looked out for the best interests of the students of Brighton area schools at all times. And I mean any school. It doesn't have to be Brighton. He could be at a meet someplace. I've already heard of what he does for others. The issue is that I think we need to thank Miles for that, and that allowed the freedoms, and he looked out for those young people for year after year, and that's a big deal, and I appreciate that. And the next one. And then the other day I handed out a little pocket reference guide about Brighton School area. That's the mission of the school. Virtually this was built off of things that I had listened to Miles on, and a couple other board members and a couple of community people, and I handed it out. I hope everybody got a chance to read it, but I think Miles pretty much lived this every day, and it's a few pages, so I'm not going to read through it, but that was good. And then one other little thing. Jobs go unfilled in Michigan. Miles, I believe, worked tirelessly to see our students get an education that would fill jobs, and they'd be able to leave the school and go to work. And that's another thing that I think that if we take a lesson from a person, you know, Miles was in the school, he was working with the students, he'd be out in the, we'll call it the job arena. And I think that take our hat off to that. And I know this somewhere, and I'm thinking of Bill Anderson and his involvement. He had brought back significant information from Lansing that helped the district make decisions. Very similar. Miles had a local inside kind of aspect to our school. So I think our board, our school, the town, like I said, agree with all his decisions. Probably I don't. But like I said, when it came to the students, and I have a thing about the Hillsdale Charter here, and a lot of it has to do, and I mean, Miles followed it anyway. He didn't need a Hillsdale Charter to tell him to follow it. He just did it. And it's a nice thing. So thank you, Miles, thank you. Bill Anderson, Mr. Anderson, thank you. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Any additional board reports at this time? Mr. View?
Yeah, I'd just like to take this time to thank everybody, thank the boards that I've been involved with, superintendents, administration, and staff. I first started in 2004. I was first elected, and
Wait, 2004?
was it? No, 1994. So, yeah,
Memory goes.
yeah,
doesn't it?
1994. Whoa, that's a long time. 1994, and I just have to tell you a story how I ended up getting on the board. I had several businesses, and of course, I was young. The taxes were important to me at the time. And there was a method schools used to use with Headley overrides. They would do a Headley override, and I would argue and say, that's a tax increase. And they said, no, we're just getting the millage that we were guaranteed. And I said, that's the point of the Headley Amendment. It only lets you grow 3%. And I said, if you override it, you're actually increasing the taxes. So what happened, I went to a board meeting and I presented this to the school board, and the president told me I didn't know what I was talking about. And I said, well, I got this from Mr. Headley. And she said, well, you go tell Mr. Headley, he doesn't know what he's talking about. So I went back to Mr. Headley and I told him, you know, hey, I got this problem. Am I presenting it wrong or what? Am I not understanding it? He says, no, you got it right. He says, when's your next meeting? I said, next Monday. He says, okay, I'm going to be there. He says, you go back up and present it again. You tell him that I said you're doing it right. So I did. Again, I was told, I don't know what I'm talking about. Why am I wasting my time? I said, Mr. Headley told me this is the way it is. And the president said, well, you go back and tell him that I said he doesn't know what he's talking about. And just then he came from the back and he says, okay, what do you want to tell me? The president was quite surprised. Make a long story short, I was correct. And at that point in time, I said, it's probably time that somebody get on the board that knew something about the taxation. And so that's how I first ended up on the board. But once I was on the board, I learned so much more about the kids, about the staff, about the administration, about people I worked with on the board. And I realized everybody's got a niche. I could go down this board right here and tell you everybody's niche. Bill Anderson brought everything from the state. He worked at the state. If we needed something and wanted to know something, what was happening, he was our go-to guy. Beth Miner, she was our education person. If we wanted to know how things worked in the classroom or what we needed to do, we'd go to her. Bill Tromley was in the construction business. When I was president, I made him chairman of the bond committee. And this is the first time that I've been on the board that we're under budget and we're saving money and we're going to get the projects done on time. Nick Fiani, a young man who did extremely well in school, and finance came on here. He went right into the budget, and he knows the numbers, and helped us in these last 2 years get out of debt. John Conley's a businessman. He knew how to take a look at the picture and see where things were wrong and needed to be corrected and how to correct them. And Jay Krause was our corporate man, the corporate structure, kind of keeping us in line when we got to get off base a little bit. And then you have these two people right here, Dr. Gray and Dr. Gistinger, just phenomenal leaders. Dr. Gray, he steered the ship, and Dr. Gistinger, she was plugging the holes when it was leaking. And in Star, she was the one that had to listen to all of us and take all the notes and try to figure out what was really going on and keep everybody straight. And there was some more, Mr. Vecchione in the background, and John Thompson, and many more, and the staff. It's been a great learning experience for me. The people have been great. The kids are fantastic. Brighton, you can be proud. I've been to many districts, seen many kids, and the Brighton kids are fantastic. And that's because of all of you, and all of you. So, thank you for the 19 years.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your dedication and commitment to the district. 19 years is certainly a long time to be in this position. Unpaid, thankless, as Dr. Gray said, but you've done a lot of good for the community, a lot of good for the kids, and I know they appreciate it.
I just have to tell you one last thing. When I was out there in the audience, like everybody else, at one point the board members got $150 per diem, and they used to have a lot of meetings and a lot of subcommittee meetings, and I was the one that pushed to get no pay.
I only remember it being $20. How come you got 150?
It was 150, and then we took it to 20, and then we got rid of the 20.
Now it's nothing. Bring your own snacks, right? Are there any additional board reports or correspondence at this time? We will be going back to the Shining Stars. Mr. Vecchione, we are excited to recognize our quiz bowl team this evening.
Thank you, Board President, and I appreciate your patience with us. And I'm up here, up in front of me. It's about me. We've brought a lot of clubs, a lot of teams, a lot of groups up here over the past few months. It's a very special team here. They're sort of like under the radar team. They're our quiz bowl team for 2014-15. And it's weird that they're under the radar because these 5 gentlemen, in rotation of 4, actually compete against other schools in mid-Michigan and are on television. So they get a chance to actually watch them compete. I had a chance to watch them about a week and a half ago. They made it to the semifinals for the state of Michigan, which is pretty impressive for Brighton, because I think it's the second time in 25 years, Ethan, and one other team went farther than you. Is that correct? Do you remember
There have been 2 teams that have won it, but the first one was the very...
Before I was even in Brighton, yeah. So watching these guys compete was pretty impressive. They took on Ionia in the semifinals of the Green Division, and even Matt Ottinger said, who's the person who asked the questions in this game, that this is one of the most impressive matches he had seen, and it was a 370 to 350 point match. They lost by 1 question. And it was tough, but these guys were gracious losers, but I tell you, it's an impressive group. Their average ACT score, 33.8.
Wow.
They're coached by Dinah Brennan, who's sitting in the back. She didn't want to get up in front of you. And he's brightest and our best, and I want to introduce to you Alec Brennan, Joe Krinky, Tommy Oliver, Ethan Curtis, and Trevor Faith. I know I bounced around a bit, Alec.
Yeah, you do better there. You didn't get a trophy.
Congratulations, gentlemen, and if you wish to leave, you are welcome to do so at this time. Unless you want to stay, of course. At this time, we have our 4 action items of the evening. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of November 24th, 2014 as presented? Moved by Mrs. Minor,
Support.
supported by Mr. View. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0, 1 abstention. Is there a motion to approve the choir trip to Italy 2016 as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Minor,
Support.
supported by Mr. Trombley. Any discussion? Mrs. Minor?
Is there anybody here?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
I have one question.
If you wish, you can stand up to the podium.
On the first page, it says, in what ways will the district benefit? And you said there will be 40 students who have a new perspective on the world. And then on the back, on student trip information, how many students are eligible? You have 115. So how many are going?
Well, we've taken 2 trips in the last 2 years. This is my 3rd year in the district. 2 years ago, we went to Chicago. We invited all the students to go. We had 50 choose to go. Last year, we went to New York City. We invited all the students in the program to go. There were 120 last year, 50 chose to go. So I'm assuming that number is going to be right around 40 to 50.
Okay. Do you have a maximum that you can take, or is it just?
Well, our numbers as projected are 45. I'm sure that our travel company would help us out if we wanted to take a larger group.
We can take as many as sign-ups.
Okay.
Any additional questions or comments? Mr. Anderson?
Honestly, as I read this, I'm going into Vatican City during Holy Week, and I'm saying, okay, we're going to go do all these tour things. I'm going, how are you even going to keep 40 people together? You know, it's kind of like, going in and saying you're going to tour, downtown Chicago during the St. Patrick's Day Parade. I mean, that's a lot of people there. And what is the experience? Who's gone at that kind of time period and done this kind of program? I'm just, it's like, oh my gosh, really?
I'm Holly, I'm from the travel company. We send thousands of people every Easter to the Holy Land, or to the Vatican. We have guides that are Italian guides that live in Rome that take our groups everywhere. They're amazing. It's just not a problem. We were used to dealing with crowd control, and we'll plan the itinerary so that we maximize, the times of the day that the traffic's going to be better. But Rome it can accommodate everybody during Holy Week, And part of the trip is in Rome, part of it's in Florence and the surrounding countryside. So we would probably plan some of the time in Rome for the days that are, maybe not Holy Thursday, Good Friday, through Monday, is what I will tell you. But we're thousands of people a year we take to Italy. We're comfortable handling it. Does that answer your question?
We're going, whoa. But
Yeah.
Any additional questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Is there a motion to approve policies 1420, 3220, 5830, 7540.03, 8325, and 8330 as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Reiner. Support by Mr. Tremblay. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
love the food guidelines. By the way, I was noticing that there were special lunches for perfect attendance. Better check out the food guidelines.
Is there a motion to approve the hiring of Jody? Dr. Gray, would you like to? Diacontomus? I apologize for botching that. A multi-year meeting as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Anderson. Support by Mr. Tremblay. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Is there a motion to call for the annual organizational meeting for Thursday, January 15th, 2015, at 5:30 p.m. in the boardroom at FAT 125 South Church Street, Brighton, Michigan?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Tremblay,
Support.
supported by Mr. Conley. Any discussion?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Please state your rationale for that change.
Well, there was
It's always done on Monday, it's always done at 7 o'clock, you've changed it to Thursday at 5:30. Please
It's-
explain your rationale.
it was a proposed change, hence why we're here for
And I'm
discussion.
asking why.
Yes, I'm about to explain.
Okay.
No, I'm opening up for discussion, but it's a proposed change. I proposed it based upon, in the past calendar year, speaking with members of the community, variety of individuals, they had indicated that board meetings would be more convenient to attend if they were towards the end of the week and earlier within the evening. I've had various discussions and various explanations. For example, students would be more likely able to attend and would attend if they were at around closer to the end of school time, because that way it doesn't interfere with extracurricular activities such as your choir concerts, your band ensembles, football games, for example. Parents have also indicated that what tends to happen with them is when you're on Mondays, typically at 7 p.m. or around the 7 p.m. timeline, they're either tied up with trying to get a babysitter because they want to make sure their kids are in bed on time, or dinner arrangements. Also, a number of working individuals have indicated that when they are earlier in the evening, for example, 5 o'clock, 5:30, they can stop in right after work. On their way home, stop in, view the meeting, and then head home from there. Also,
But that's an argument for establishing the schedule, which is not before this group, because that's a function of the motions made at the first meeting of the new board.
that's true.
So I guess the question is, why not just use the traditional time? And if the next board chooses to go in that direction, of course, that's the latitude of that board. So you're making arguments over how all meetings should be made.
Well, I just want to, I'm not making an argument, I'm just presenting the findings and the direction I would recommend.
And that's fine if you want to make that argument at the organizational meeting. why not just set up under the normal schedule that anybody has been used to for the last 20 years? And then if you want to go in that direction, that's up to the board.
I completely agree, but it's up to this board right now to set the time for the organizational meeting. So, this is what I'm presenting, and I won't continue.
I guess my point would be that you're setting up a scenario where people who are used to being at a particular meeting at a particular time are going to be potentially showing up for a meeting that's not here. And how are you going to express to the entire community, you know, the fact that this very important meeting is going to be held in an alternative time to what is normally being used?
I don't think that's a justifiable argument in that we're at December 8th right now, and the meeting will be to propose January 15th. So that, of course, we'll also post it as we do traditionally on the website, via the media, the newspaper, all our traditional methods, and that's over a month away anyways. In addition, I never believed in the argument, we've been doing it like this for 20 years, so we should keep doing it that way. I think there's a lot of things this district has done in the past 20 years that got them into trouble in the first place, so I think it's always good to change.
I don't think times and means are in that, and especially for people. You know, certain people run for office based upon schedules and making sure that they can accommodate the office with their schedule. And, I mean, that's why you set up those kinds of things on a regular basis.
Well, and that'll be something the board can discuss at the organizational meeting when they propose future meeting times.
I just find it to be an arbitrary change and have very little rational basis for change.
I have a question.
Yeah, Mr. Krause.
What if 4 people can't make this meeting?
If 4 people can't make the meeting, then the process would be you can't form a quorum, and then you would have to reschedule the meeting. That would be the process.
Okay. Just checking. I mean, like I said, I agree with Mr. Anderson, is that I'm sure, I can't speak for the new board members, but I'm sure that you plan your agenda around preconceived times. I mean, I can tell you right now, I'm probably not going to be here. So I'm a little disappointed that this is coming up for discussion here and have to take action on it the same night. I mean, we try to avoid this whole, you know, throw something in the agenda and approve it. So I'm just, you know, so you might have one person, if 3 other people can't make it, I don't know their schedules. I don't know if you queried any of the board members and their availability or.
I mean, this is a meeting that every member
Yeah, this is.
Without a doubt. And I think
and by moving it off, you moved away from the assumption that people have put it on their calendar.
I've adjusted.
Well, wait, you have to remember, we're in December right now. This is December 8th. I think reasonable accommodations can be made quite easily, given it's over a month away.
And the easiest accommodation is simply leave it as a normal schedule.
I rescheduled international travel based on that Monday meeting.
Well, respectfully, I think that was a mistake on your part because we haven't set the agenda yet.
I think the Bill's point is we have schedules. I mean, I have a job, I spend half of my time.
Wouldn't it have been more responsible to wait until we vote on when the organizational meeting is going to be before you reschedule your plans?
No, I mean, my company doesn't care what this board does.
I don't disagree.
I have something to say.
Yes, Mrs. Flynn.
As a parent who's had young children, as an elementary teacher who would not be getting out till 4 o'clock, who has a husband who had not even, at that time, been getting home by 5:30, who had children who had ballet, brownies, scouts right after school, this would be a very difficult time to make as a family person at 5:30. You need to feed your children, you need to make sure they're set at home, you need to, I'm sure, I don't know, have you talked to Mr. Stahl, or have you talked to?
They won't return my, Mr. Stahl and Mr. Chesney?
So you don't know
No,
if our
they
two
won't return my
electees
emails.
can
Mr.
even
Stahl and Mr.
attend
Chesney
the
won't return my emails.
to be elected or
I
sworn in that
I
night.
can't speak to Mr. Stahl and Mr. Chesney because they won't return my emails.
It would be horribly inconvenient for the meeting to be on Thursday.
And
I
this-
would prefer it on that day.
is over. Mr. Trombley?
Well, then, okay, I won't be, I'm not part of the public. I make a motion to return the organizational meeting to the second Monday in January at 7 o'clock.
A motion has been made. Is there a support?
Support.
Support by Mrs. Minor. I assume you mean to amend the current motion?
Yes,
We already have a motion on the table,
yes.
so you wish to motion to amend?
That's what I offered, was an amendment to,
You offered a motion.
I move to amend the motion.
Supported by Mrs. Minor. Any discussion?
I have a comment. Instead of making a federal case out of this, I would just suggest leaving it the way it was and let the new board make any decisions after that. I understand where you're coming from, Nick, and I agree with, some of the things you said, because I've had people say the same thing to me, but it's probably best let the new board hash it out.
No, remember, this is the organizational
I
meeting,
understand.
so
It's not
for the
important.
future.
It's not important to me, per se, because I'll be gone. It's important to you guys that are gonna be here. So I'm just saying it's
Well, I
best
think-
that
I
all
think
be
it's-
discussed.
Right, I think it's important to recognize that this is for the organizational meeting and that it doesn't set the timeline for future meetings, so.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying, I would just keep it the way it's been and future board, for future organizational meetings, do whatever you want.
Well, you're on the board right now.
I know, but I won't be on the board. I know. This is my last meeting.
That's fine.
It could be 2 minutes to get this baby done.
Yeah. So, we'll take a roll call vote on the amendment to the motion. Mr. Fiani? No. Mr. Trombley?
No.
Mr. Conley?
No.
Mrs. Minor?
Yes?
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. View? And Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Okay, the motion to amend the action item fails, 4-3. We have the motion on the table, however, still, to call for the organizational meeting. Is there any additional discussion?
Yeah, I wanted to say back to Mrs. Minor's comment, is that I do have 2 young kids. They are in extracurricular activities after school, and to be honest with you, moving the meeting up, I wish all the meetings could be moved up earlier, because it would certainly help me getting them where they gotta be after these meetings. Who knows, these meetings carry on 9:30, 10 o'clock in some instances. I'd like to get home earlier and, help them or do what I have to do with them as well. So I do have a family, and it would certainly appreciate the earlier time for mine.
Any additional discussion?
I would just remind Mr. View that I remember a certain organizational meeting that we had to move just so that you could get here from a wrestling tournament. And we had to adjourn a meeting for several hours to make sure you could get here, just to make sure you could vote, because we wanted 7 people at the board to make the decisions.
So there was an organizational meeting that was not held?
There was an organizational, there was a meeting that we had to move specifically to meet the time guidelines of a bond proposal.
Right, but I'm trying to understand this. There was an organizational meeting, though, that was held.
And
at a
every
time-
board
Mr.
member,
Mr. Anderson, I'm the chair of the committee.
And I'm the person who has the floor.
No, you don't. You stopped talking. I made an
No.
inquiry. I made an inquiry after you stopped talking.
Okay, let's just move forward.
I just want to clarify, there was an organizational meeting that was held at a time that was not 7 PM on Monday night.
It was 4 years ago. 5 years ago? 4 years ago?
Probably
I don't think it was.
January 7th, 2012,
I
probably.
I remember we had to have a meeting
Probably.
that we needed to vote on the bond, to approve the bond. And we actually adjourned the meeting for several hours to make sure that Mr. View could be here, so we had 7 members, because he was at the Manning View Invitational Wrestling Tournament.
That was on a Saturday.
Yeah, it was on a Saturday.
And
And
I think to your point is that's an actual event that you're trying to work around. It makes perfect sense, and it also makes sense that we had requirements to the state, right, Dr. Britton? We were trying to get.
There was a time frame issue with the scheduling of the bond.
And every board member was queried before we did that to make sure that we gave the dignity to the office that every board member could be there. And in fact, then we found out we had the conflict, couldn't change it because we'd already adjourned for the year. And so what we did was we called the meeting to order and recessed and said, we'll come back in 5 hours so that, Miles, you could be here. And I think it's important that you set a time that all 7 members can be here.
Well, when 2 future board members don't provide input, it's hard to carry on that discussion. But we're all here this evening, so we could.
But I'm a sitting board member that has a conflict, and it wasn't brought up to me.
I understand.
So that argument to say.
We're discussing it. We're discussing it. Now, correspondence has taken place and was not returned, and that's out of my hands, so. But we could go ahead and we could vote on this, Mayor, at this time with a roll call vote. Any additional discussion? Mr. Fiani? Yes. Mr. Trombley?
Yep.
Mr. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Meyer?
No?
Mr. View?
No.
Mr. Kraus?
No.
Mr. Anderson?
No.
At this time, that leaves us with no organizational meeting called for January.
We have to have one.
Understood.
Okay.
Understood.
So,
I'd like to make a motion
we gotta do.
to establish the organizational meeting for the Brighton Board of Education as the second Monday in January 2015 at 7:01 p.m.
Is there a support?
Support.
Makes it a different motion.
Moved by Mr. Anderson. Support by Mrs. Meyer. Roll call. Mr. Fiani? No. Mr. Trump?
Yes.
Mr. Conley?
Yep. Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes?
Mr. View?
Yes.
Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Motion is approved, 6-1. Is there a motion to approve the contract extension of Northland Services for the 2015, 2016, 2016, 2017, and 2017, 2018 fiscal years?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Trombley,
Support.
supported by Ms. Minor. Any discussion? Mr. Conley?
They've agreed to a contract that long without modification?
This was the original contract, and in the original contract, we said because we had been working through some improvement plans in this area, that we were going to go a 1 year, see how it went, and then if there was good service, we would look to extend it.
So obviously, we're happy with the service.
Very happy.
All right, and then, so there's no increase in the cost over the next couple of years?
This is it.
It's set. Okay, thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries, 7-0. Is there a motion to approve the elimination of membership fees for the Brighton Senior Center commencing July 1st, 2015?
So moved. Oh.
Moved by Mr. Trombley. Is there a support?
Support.
Support by Mr. View. Any discussion? Mr. Kraus.
Back to what I said earlier, do we know, Marie, what the financial impact of that is yearly?
Of the pay to participate,
Senior Center.
senior center, it's about 18,000.
Any additional discussion? Mrs. Minor?
I'm going to err on the, well, I'm going to be cautious at this time because the state hasn't had their January budget meeting. We don't know what's happening with the road tax at the state level. One of the bills could be taking money away from the schools, and we don't have a budget for that school year yet. Maria doesn't have anything made. So I think this would be something for the future to look at, but I think it's a little early at this time, simply because there's so many unknowns.
Any additional, Mr. Conway?
Yeah, I've looked at their budget projections, and it can be changed in the future if it has to be, if it takes us out of formula, but I think that we're well within a reasonable assumption, especially not doing it today, but doing it in the next cycle. I think, again, the senior center, they pay their taxes and have paid their taxes, and then they get charged fees on top of already paying their taxes, and it would be very a reasonable thing to do at this time. The district, in my opinion, owes it to them.
Mr. Anderson?
I guess my first question is it's an $18,000 reduction in revenue, but there's no corresponding reduction in programming associated with it. To reiterate what Mrs. Minor was talking about, for instance, side impacts, you know, in terms of changes in terms of revenue projections, anything you looked at needs to take into account the vote that occurred Thursday night that, for instance, would reduce transit revenue by approximately 25%. Now, what does that mean? For instance, the senior center, I believe, just received a new van that was funded through that transit money.
It was.
And essentially revenues that went to providing that kind of service to our senior center and to the citizens of this community would be cut by 25% over the course of the next 8 years. Of course, it's a little bit each year. Even a greater challenge, obviously, is the House version of the transportation tax that essentially puts the school aid fund in a scenario that it has a high potential of having almost no growth for pretty much the next decade, because you are essentially diverting close to $1 billion when fully implemented away from schools into roads. It's not saying that our roads don't need that money, but the question is, when you are taking essentially all the growth revenue out of the school aid fund, as Mr. View points out on numerous occasions, you can't spend more than what you're taking in the beginning, you know, in that year. So I think this issue, you know, once we know what's going to happen to school revenues, when we settle this issue, whether we're going to take $1 billion a year out of school revenues, what that's going to mean to the Brighton School District, and what we're going to have, these are issues that you can start talking about. And I think they are appropriate for discussion within the context of this is the money we have and this is the priorities for the money and how it's going to be spent. But also I want to make sure we don't go down the same path we went down a couple of years ago, where we started taking out the participation fees in anticipation that we weren't going to be in debt, and that didn't turn out, and we just compounded the debt. So, you know, these are the times for caution, especially. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. View?
Yes, as you said, it's $18,000. What I'd like to remind everybody, back in the 68 and again back in 85, there was millage passed for the senior center to operate it. Now, it wasn't a lot of millage, it was 1/8 of a mil each time. That's a quarter mil. Today's 1 mil is equivalent to over $2 million. we're talking about $500,000 that the senior center should have been getting all these years, and we never did give it to them.
Where'd it go, Miles?
You know, we took from them. We've been doing it for 20 years, well, since 1994. And, you know, I brought it up before, but we were in a financial situation, and I understood. It's not just the seniors, but it was recreation, it was community ed, it was a lot of athletics, it was a lot of other things. They were all milled. They rolled into Proposal A. That's how we came up with these figures each school district got. It's not just K through 12 education, it was the entire community. There are some districts that have planetariums and outdoor recreation that's built into their per pupil amount. There's some districts that had district libraries built in their per pupil amount. Here in Brighton, these are some of the things we had. Now, these people pay the taxes. They've paid them for years. They're senior citizens. You know, $20 might not seem a lot to you, but I've been to the senior center. I spent a lot of time there. I mean, these people do everything they can to come up with the $20 so they can have a little recreation. Now, if we can't come up with $18,000 when we're going to have over $1 million of revenue this coming year, and probably more than that, because our budget's a little thick right now.
I'd have to disagree with that.
Well, that's okay, you can disagree. But we do have $1 million right now.
Mr. Crowe?
I'm not done.
Sorry.
Mr. Lee?
It was a lull.
Oh, I'm just catching my. So I'm just saying, is this the intent of this board? Is to steal from these senior citizens that have paid their taxes, the people who have passed these mills to support the senior center? And if the answer is, well, we never had any intention to support the senior center, is that what you're going to say about the new swimming pool we just built, the new athletic fields we just built, that we're not going to put any money to support them? Because if that's the case, then we made a mistake passing that bond. Are you going to say, on one of the things you turned down here on the line items, one of the reasons why the school was falling apart is because we had no preventative maintenance money. We had no capital outlay money because we stole it. We stole it and we put it into salaries. Now, is that what you're telling people right now who just spent $90 million to refurbish all this? That you're not going to put any money into maintaining it? No capital outlay, no preventative maintenance? Just like with the seniors right now? And with pay to play? If that's what you're going to say, I made a big mistake passing this bond, supporting it. And if that's the case, I apologize to the community for passing this bond.
Mr. Crowe?
I want to clarify that I support getting rid of both of these, but I don't think today's the day to do it. We're still a deficit district. We as a board kind of agreed that we weren't going to do anything like this till we were out of deficit. And we're not out of deficit till July.
Actually, our balance sheet, it'll be probably into December.
Yeah, okay, but still, till you do a new budget, till you do a new budget. But I would like to see these things rolled into our first budget for next year and saying, all right, if we were to reduce all of this, show that line item with the cost of the district, same with pay to play, and if they look right and the numbers balance, we can do it. As a board, we approve those things before the beginning of the year, and you get the same result. I just think doing it now where we don't have the back data to say we're ready to go forward and do it, I'm just really skeptical of jumping ahead of ourselves. Like I said, I support both of these things. I mean, I had two kids that played multiple sports, and they're both in high school together, and it's not a cheap date. So, I mean, I think the more kids that can get involved in sports and, you know, really do the things that Brighton does well is a great thing for our community. I just don't know if we need this far out without knowing the impact of it, without having numbers. I think it's a little bit ahead of time.
Mr. View?
Last year, when I proposed eliminating pay-to-play, the previous year from that, we didn't have the money, and the motion was made that we reinstate pay-to-play, one half of it. I agreed to that, because we didn't have the money. Last year when we discussed it, and I was making the motion to bring it back, this board had a problem with it because Dr. Gray and Dr. Gissinger were given the numbers, and they were confident in it. And they said, let's wait until next year and see if our student counts are solid. If they are, then we'll eliminate pay-to-play and a couple of these other things. This board, by consensus, said, okay. I went along with it. Dr. Gray, is that now what you said?
That was our conversation last year.
That's correct. So here we are with $18,000 for the seniors. Pay-to-play is about $325,000, Mr. Thompson?
$255,000.
$245,000. So we're talking $18,000 for the senior centers. Come on. I mean,
Like I said, I don't disagree with doing these. I think the right way to do it is to have a budget proposal brought forward. I mean, the finances and the fiscal stability of our district are what we find very important. And I think the best thing to do is see what the effects of those will be on the next year's budget, because we're not going to use our school or the shared services money to fund these things, because we also said that. So we need to see how in our actual budget that these two things roll out against what we're outlaying, our income versus our outlay. So I think that we need to see that in the budget, not just as raw numbers, 245 and 18, but what do we offset? I don't disagree with this, and I mean, I'm hopeful and very confident that before next year's budget, these things will be taken care of. I just don't think we're in the position to take care of the community by saying, sure, let's do that, when we don't have any information, we don't have enough information. So.
Mr. Conley?
Yeah, Dr. Gissinger, in a budget scope, is there any chance this is going to mess up our budget at all?
What do you mean by mess up? Because
Create a
it's-
deficit, are we going to be short, or are we going to be short? Okay. I'll remind the board, because it's that time to do some remembering. We're going to focus on some years gone by, and Miles leaving Bill real quick. We voted in a contract a very short time ago. Not this last contract, the contract before. That contract is what forced us to take pay-to-play off the table and reinstitute it. It also, excuse me, Mr. Anderson, please. You voted for it, so did I. Okay. You voted it. By voting that contract, which I will say, Mr. President Fiani said, don't vote for it. We all did because we felt the right thing to do for the district, and we did. That contract, though, took all this stuff out. It not only did that, it that year wiped out a $500,000 book budget. Is that correct? No?
Not entirely.
Partially.
No, the 440,000 you're talking about for the half step, I believe that's what you're talking about, correct?
Yes.
Was traded in contract negotiations for either a 7-period day to reduce staff or an increase in class size per section to reduce staff. We went from 306 teachers to where we're at presently today at 293, because we knew we'd be graduating or retiring 13 teachers at 1.4 million, so our goal was to have $1 million savings. Would you have saved more if you wouldn't have given anything and still increased class size than that? Sure, you'd have saved another 440,000, but we were in the midst of bargaining at that time. So that contract is now 3 years past. We have not replaced those 13 teachers. So you have saved almost $3 million, but you did spend the 440,000
At that time.
At that time.
Okay.
Correct.
And that makes sense. So in a nutshell, like I said, we did what we believed to be right at the time. At this point, it's proved out, but it did cost us having to put this back
Yes.
in. Okay,
That's-
at the
that's
time.
correct. That's
To balance our budget.
That's accurate.
Okay, and I'm good with that. So I wanted to hear from Maria that this wouldn't affect if the senior centers us funding the seniors won't affect.
Here's
the
how
budget.
we'd answer that.
Yes.
Okay, we'd answer that
Okay.
in terms of if the projections that we sit on today are accurate in the next year, yes, I would agree with you.
Okay.
Projections are projections, but 18,000, yeah, we are 4 to 5 million in the black, and without shared services, we're between 750 and 1 million. So, yes.
Thank you. That's what I needed to know.
That's correct.
I think we're ready to vote on this, so we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Fiani? Yes. Mr. Trombley?
Yep.
Mr. Conley?
Yes.
Mrs. Minor?
No, not at this time.
Mr. View?
Yes.
Mr. Kraus?
No.
Mr. Anderson?
No.
Motion is approved 4-3. Is there a motion to approve the elimination of pay to participate for athletics commencing July 1st, 2015?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. View.
Support.
Support by Mr. Conley. Any discussion?
Again, we're going to get the same argument, but I want to bring something up. Dr. Gissinger, to pay off the energy bond, what is the total cost?
About 2.6 million.
2.6 million in 2015-16.
That's when it's callable.
It's callable in 215.
In May of 15.
May have-
And we expect on shared services to bring in approximately how much?
Right. In that year, about 5 million.
We
Net.
bring in 5 million, it costs 2.2 million. We save $500,000 from the energy bond per year, right?
Well, the 500,000, if you go back 5 years, the energy bond used to be paid out of the sinking fund.
Right.
So previous boards, it was a while ago, the energy bond in '06, I believe, was a non-voted bond, and it's about $500,000 payout each year. It's not paid for by bonded dollars, it was paid for out of general fund dollars. The general fund dollars that were elected used to be the sinking fund. The sinking fund ran out in 2009, 2010. It wasn't voted again, actually 2009. And so that 500,000 then hits the general fund. So we do pay $500,000 a year towards the energy bonds each year out of our general fund.
So that's sustainable. That will pay for the reduction of pay to play and still have $250,000 left over.
Thank you, Mr. View.
Okay?
Mr. Conley, did you?
Well, being that it was brought up and we're talking a little bit of historical again, in this situation, again, it's with our projected budget, the citizens of our community will receive a benefit by not having pay to play. That technically should, it really, no time in the near future cause us a negative impact, correct?
Again, it's based on projections, so if
I'm
the
willing to-
projections come accurate, I would agree.
I have a-
If the projections
okay.
don't come accurate, I would disagree.
And in recent history, how close has Dr. Gessinger's budget been? At the last meeting we had, I heard that our district sets a standard now in the state of Michigan for accuracy.
Less than 0.5%.
I would say that Maria can count on what she has to tell us. I would say this board can count on what she has to tell us. And I'd also go back to a historical issue on the energy bond, that the sinking fund was used for several years that should have been used for maintenance to pay an energy bond internally. It was used at the tune of $500,000 a year for a $10 million bond that was passed that taxpayers weren't really aware of. And that money, that's $500,000 a year, was supposed to be fixing our fields, our tracks, our schools, our sidewalks. And that use of that money made the necessity of a bond happen in reality. So we must never forget that. And as soon as we can pay off that historical bond, that bond was passed by a school board, and then the taxes were paid from the sinking fund. The money was taken in from the sinking fund. And I think it's good to have that on the record, and I think Miles is, and actually this board's bringing things forward to get things handled on behalf of the taxpayers so they're not being taxed again and again and again. And this board needs to continue to move forward to benefit the citizens that pay the taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conley. Mrs. Minor?
I still think we're jumping the gun. We don't have the state projections. We don't know what is happening with the bill. He could be $1 billion short. We don't know what our Dr. Gistinger has, she hasn't even laid out her budget for next year yet.
Actually, well, she's been working on it since July.
Well, have we seen it?
I've seen the
Have we
working
seen
of
it? Have you talked, you know?
Yes, I have talked to her. I go in
No,
there
no.
regularly.
Have we heard it yet? No.
I don't know if the
No.
board
Mr.
has
Chair,
spoken
she
on
had the floor.
it. No, she was raising inquiries.
No, she was making statements.
They seem like questions.
Anyway, I don't feel we have enough information. Again, this would be a good thing to do. I just think it's a couple months too early until we know all the information about our budget for next year.
Mr. Anderson.
I need some clarification. When we talk about participation fees, you know, when you go from sport to sport to sport, there's a huge array of difference in terms of what's going on. You know, when you go out and you run cross-country, you know, you have uniforms and of course you have coaching fees, but, you know, travel fees and those kinds of things, pretty basic. You know, wrestling, you're stepping up, you get your mats and that equipment. When you're going into golf, are our greens fees donated to us for our golfers? Quick question.
Yes.
Those are donated. For our home matches. I take it our ice time is not donated for the hockey team? No. I know my daughter was involved in the equestrian team. I know the school was not prepared to outfit her with the appropriate equipment to compete. I'm not aware of the school district wishing to purchase and train horses. I mean, it's pretty expensive. The fact is, you know, kids, in order to become proficient, as an example in golf, there's a good chance mom and dad have dished out a whole lot of money to put that person in perspective, to be competitive. Yeah, those are choices that have to go on. I'm not sure exactly what this resolution encompasses. I mean, we just voted to say, yeah, it's okay for parents to dish out, you know, $3,500 for their kid to participate, you know, in an outside of school activity, you know, heading off to Rome. We have the government class that goes off to Washington, D.C. every year, where the parents are expected to come up with the money, you know, to pay for that trip. We have a lot of activities by choice. I completely agree with the issue that we have to be very cognizant that if a person wishes to participate and there's a financial issue, that this district should do what it can. But at the same point, I don't think that's a $250,000 issue.
When we say $250,000, all we're talking about is the fee that goes directly to Mr. Thompson's office for the pay to participate for athletics, the $175.
Which does not include the extraneous fees that could be involved in.
Doesn't include travel, doesn't include invitationals. So to clarify for the administration, when we costed this out for you, the $250,000 approximate is just that fee. That's it.
The uniform fee for all sports based upon,
It's just the
are you in one
$175.
sport or two? Do you have multiple kids in the
It's that
district?
paperwork you fill out,
So-
you write the check.
So it doesn't mean that everybody's activity is going to be free from there on out, because there are going to be differences. For instance,
Hockey.
are going to have those extraneous issues
Exactly.
associated with it. I guess that, you know, gets into that issue. Yes, you try and minimize those costs. But again, you know, when you asked before, is $18,000 going to mess up Maria's budget? I appreciate the fact that she said no. It's not going to, you know, mess up a $50 million budget. Is $250,000 going to impact issues? And I think you're going to get, I would hope you would get a different answer. You're starting to get into issues. And again, when you say there are projections, anything that Maria was working on prior to Thursday has a completely different look in terms of what she should be looking at as potential issues today, based on what may happen in the next 10 days in Lansing. because it would have a significant impact, a long-term impact on the operations of the school district. And again, this is one of those issues I would assume we want to do this on a long-term basis. So we have to have that grounding on what that's going to mean. And I think that is an important consideration for the board when it is time to evaluate the district in terms of how much should we be spending on participation fees, how much we should be spending on capital outlay, how much we should be spending on books, how much we should be spending on maintenance. Yes, those are all issues that it's important for the 7 members to come up and say, here's our priority and here's what we're going to put into place. But this is piecemeal. And that's where I see budgets. I've heard this for 30 years. Well, it's okay if we just make this little change. You know, if we change state law, it's only this little change. And a little change, and a little change, and all of a sudden you're saying, how did it become $1 billion? Well, because it's a lot of little changes. You know, whether it's 18,000 on one and 250,000 on the next, or the, you know, 300,000 for capital outlay, the $50,000 for the books. That's money. That's real money.
I think we're ready to vote on this. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Fiani? Yes. Mr. Drummer?
Yes.
Mr. Conlon?
Yes.
Mrs. Minor?
No?
Mr. View?
Yes.
Mr. Kraus?
No.
And Mr. Anderson?
No.
Motion carries 4-3. Dr. Gray, for future action, no policies.
We have 4 policies in front of you, actually 5, 7540.04, educational technology acceptable use and safety, which changes every time we have policy, because technology changes every time we have policy updates. The second one is in relation to food services. It's the extension of what we've talked about previously. 8540 is those policies and their accompanying vending machine rights in the school district. They have to follow policy just like everybody else. 9211, district support organizations, again, is in relation to the food caloric intake and size consumed. That, once again, whether it's an event or that, if it's run during the school day, has to fall within that particular standard. And then 9800, for a long time now, high school diplomas have been available to veterans of World War II, Korean conflict. The new addition on this one, now that the time has passed long enough, is the Vietnam era has been added to this particular legislation, or this particular policy, because it was added to legislation. So, we've given you the cheat sheet on this. If you have questions over the next several weeks, give me a call and we can answer any specifics you might have.
And Dr. Gistinger, finance, for information.
Yes, I just wanted to point out to the board that we have the bills of November 21st in your board packet, and for what's going on in my department right now, we are currently working on amending the budget. We should have that to the board sometime very soon.
Thank you, Dr. Gistinger. Dr. Gray, Superintendent Human Resources report.
The only thing we have tonight, you've already found, and they're behind you, they're your gift bags. All schools within the district have given you something for your holiday enjoyment. Scranton has hand-painted thank you stationery, and look really closely, my daughter made one of them, I'm pretty proud. Maltby has knapsacks and gift bags. Hawkins, a hand-painted towel. Hilton, hand-painted quilts. Horning, handmade wreaths, appreciation gifts. Spencer, hand-painted magnets. PHS, gift cards, and the Bridge, canned applesauce. All of those are given to you for your service, and they appreciate it as much as the rest of us. There you go.
Thank you, Dr. Gray. Here, student representative.
Our winter trimester began last Tuesday. We had several art students display their work at the Connection Youth Services Homeless Awareness Art Show, which you guys know from Shining Stars. Mr. Van Oate's third hour class was invited to paint the front windows of the Brighton Ford. The community is invited to come judge the elementary windows next Tuesday, December 16th from 5 to 7. Sergeant Wright from the National Guard is coming tomorrow to speak to some of our students who are interested in serving our country. The peer leaders are currently brainstorming ideas on how to start our food pantry. We look forward to sharing this process with you. As part of our school improvement plan, we will begin our attendance our attendance incentive next Thursday by taking all the students who have perfect attendance to lunch at a local restaurant.
Thank you. And thank you for your service. Yes, Ms.
What day was the food windows?
Oh, the 16th.
5 to 7, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for your service as a student representative on behalf of the bridge.
Thanks for having me.
At this time, we have the second call to the public. If anybody wishes to speak, please step up to the microphone. You will have 3 minutes. Please state your name as well.
Ellen Lafferty, again. Here we go. 3 things I wanted to note tonight. On page 64 of that Neola policy, it refers to social media on personal, private sites of employees. I think you should take extreme caution with this. You're stepping onto First Amendment rights when you go this route. I think it's a slippery slope. And I don't think it should be, if you are going to go that way, it shouldn't be just employees. I think it should be anybody, board member, paid or unpaid, person that is affiliated with the district, they should be included as well. Not necessarily a paid employee, because if that were the case, it'd be a whole different discussion. So please consider that for your next vote. As far as the senior center, I'm not sure we are in the business right now as a K-12 school district. That's what we do. That's our job. Our job is not to run a senior center. It's a nice sideline to the district. It's community offering, but it should never cost the district money. And if this isn't a cost-neutral endeavor, then what are we doing? We look at every department. You look at community ed, you look at food service, you look at all of these. And if this senior center comes up on the negative, you've just created that. There's no horse trading here. That's not why we're here. We're here to educate students. Again, that's something you should look at, and maybe the next board in January might want to rethink and rescind this motion until we are sure where we're at. The same with pay to play. $250,000, just like that, was spent tonight, on top of the $18,000 for the senior center, just like that. Ignoring what's going on at the state level. We don't know what's going on. We have this gas tax, 6%. 4.5% goes to schools and local communities. Very realistically could happen. Who knows what's going on in Lansing these days? I can't figure it out. But anyway, this board, without knowing what's going on, just threw away $250,000 with pay to play. And this did not happen because of a contract 4 years ago. I was in the State Board of Education when Carol Willingham, did I say that right? Wellenberg chastised this board for even considering bringing back, or rescinding, pay to play. This board was told to put it back. We are in a deficit, and that action flew in the face of what a deficit district action does. And so that's why pay to play was brought back to this district. The state said it. It wasn't a contract. That's insulting. That's it. Hopefully, once more, I hope this pay to play, the next board will think about this and rescind this whole motion until you know where you're at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Bond, and I just want to comment on the whole hours of the Board of Education meeting. I am a teacher, and I teach in a district with 20 schools, and I can tell you that our regular attendance at our board meeting is nowhere near the attendance that happens here in Brighton. So I think having the board meetings packed on a normal basis is a positive and doesn't really show much of a need to change it. And speaking as a teacher and as a mom, 5:30 is much too early. That is when you're eating or you're stuck in rush hour traffic. And as a teacher, I would never ever consider having anything that I would expect community members to come to at 5:30. Always 6:30 and above. Even our primetime care friendship centers don't even, close until 6 o'clock, showing that that's a need for most working families. And so I just want you to think about that. And for your organizational meeting, for all the board members, again, reminding you to be kind, be respectful, and be responsible in your future leadership projections. I hope that you vote on leaders that will make sure respect and kindness is at their utmost importance, so that I can bring my Horning Imagination chapter here. As we're doing some awesome things, we're getting tons of little bits and circuitry things, a lot of LED lights and circuit things to teach them conductive threading with sewing. And we're doing Hour of Code this Thursday, so there's a lot of awesome things. But again, I just need to make sure that this is a safe place emotionally for the children to be in. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to take a second to thank Miles View and Billy Anderson before you guys go. That was kind of nice right there. Kind of, it underlines what we really expect as parents and taxpayers to see up here is integrity. And if we're seeing integrity and we're hearing integrity, and then everything else should fall into place. And on that note, I want to have the existing members of next year's board, as well as those that are here that aren't on the board now, consider posting a Brighton K-12 email address on our website. I was reading through the Michigan School Board's Code of Ethics, and it seems, it's not prohibited specifically, but it seems that, as I emailed you all this week, I couldn't believe how many of you had private email addresses listed on our website. I think it's inappropriate. When I looked at other public school districts around the area, and I did not see that same phenomenon, and it's unsettling. It makes me wonder, and maybe others, how much communication is going on and with whom, and why they need to be communicating on a platform that could never, be open to public scrutiny. As you know, any communications you have are supposed to be open to the Freedom of Information Act. And if you're doing an email that is not a Brighton K-12 email, it's not transparent. So I would ask that you change that. But back to the integrity. Thank you, Miles, for having integrity. Thank you, Billy Anderson, for having integrity and for so much expertise. I didn't even know that I was going to be voting for the bond, let alone arguing for it. And when I went to the meeting that you had at the BCPA, and you were able to sort of articulate how our taxes were going to go down for a certain period, until the refinance expired. And anyway, it just blew my mind. And I appreciated your expertise in making that intelligible. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Hi, Kara Totero. I just wanted to, I guess this is more a question instead of a statement, is that the pay-to-play elimination is only for athletics, whereas there's a lot of other activities that students have to pay to participate in, and I was wondering why you were limiting to that. I do think it should wait until we have the budget for next year, but if you should consider it in the future, maybe think about the other things. And I'd like to echo what Jennifer said about the 5:30 time. That seems to me in January could be a problem for any sort of snow issue. If that's a day that starts snowing, then everyone needs that extra time to get here at 7 o'clock. Also, the time that you chose was the same time as the school improvement meeting that happens in this room from 4:30 to 6 p.m. that particular day. So you kind of double booked here too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Dave Chesney, 5245 Milroy. And I just wanted to say thank you to Bill Anderson and to Miles View for your years and years and years of service. over 25 years cumulative between you two, and that's outstanding. And I wanted you both to know too that there are 2 cards circulating through the schools being signed right now, and I'll make sure to get them to Mrs. Ackermite, and then those will get to you. And then also there will be some additional donations towards to buy more grossology books, and books of your choice to the school of your choice. And those also will go to Mrs. Ackermite too. So those will be rounding up sometime certainly before the holiday break. So thank you again for your years of service.
I thought I'd come up here and get used to my new position in the community. Actually, I just want to tell the board and the community, it's been asked, what's my big passion with wrestling? 47 years ago, my father moved me to Brighton. I was a state champion wrestler in Hazel Park. I came to Brighton, they didn't have a wrestling team, and he started wrestling in Brighton. And they named a tournament after him. It's a Manning View Invitational. I coached for Brighton for 7 years, and I varsity, and I coached at Scranton Middle School 2-3 years. So I do have a passion. But I want to talk about this year's team. It was 47 years ago we started, and we have a team right now that is ranked 3rd in the state. We're ranked in the top 50 in the country right now. We have 9 wrestlers that are regional qualifiers, state qualifiers, all staters. This summer, many of our wrestlers wrestled, and I think we have 11 that placed in the nationals throughout different tournaments. Mrs. Reineker's son is one of them. He's a 2-time state qualifier and state placer. And we have probably the toughest schedule this year anywhere in the state of Michigan. Just to give you an example, Wednesday, we're doing an assembly match at Catholic Central. They're 2-time state champions. They've won the state championship like 5 times in the last 7 years. And on paper, we're going to beat them. On the 17th, we have probably the toughest school in the state of Michigan. They're probably state champions 6 out of the last 9 years, and that's Dundee. And they will be here at Brighton on the 17th. On the 20th, we have the Manning View Invitational. We have won it 9 out of 10 years, and we're going to make it 10 out of 11. We go back to Catholic Central for an invitation. It's an open, it's individual tournament, and you're going to see a lot of our Brighton wrestlers place there. Then we go on the 10th of January. It's called Matt Mayhem. It's in Indiana, and these are the state-ranked high schools in the country. And we're going to find out what we're made out of. We go to the Williamston Classic on the 17th, and then on the 21st, we go against our competition, Heartland. Heartland is one of the top wrestling schools here in the state. And then on the 25th, first time ever, Brighton will be wrestling Lowell, who are 3-time state champions, at Michigan State in a dual match while Michigan State is wrestling Wisconsin. So anybody who wants to go to Michigan State and see the team. These are a great bunch of boys. Get a lot of grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles and parents that come and see them. It would be nice to see some student body come and see them, because they're fantastic. And their grade point last year was, what was it, Mr. Thompson, 3.65?
That sounds about right.
We're a bunch of wrestlers. Back in my days, we were probably 1.65.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's my passion, and that's why. And good luck to the Bulldogs.
Hi, I'm Joellen Pizarczyk, Brighton Township. I think I wanted to talk about the discussion tonight about pay to play. I think that we all recognize how valuable extracurricular activities are to a child's education and how important it is. It breaks my heart to think that there might be some kids who aren't participating because they're too embarrassed to ask for the supplemental funds. And kids tend to be very, very shy that way and self-conscious anyway. So I think it's unconscionable that a talented child would not be able to be participating in choir or the plays or cheerleading or any athletic activity simply because their family happens to not be able to afford the extra $175. So I think that if there's any way to make that happen and keep it available to children, we ought to be doing it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'm the last one. So, Andy Birchfield, I just want to thank both Miles and Bill for your work on this board. I know it's a thankless job, and well done by both of you. So thank you for your commitment to the community. It's much appreciated.
Does anyone else wish to speak at this time? At this time, the second call of the public is closed and the meeting is adjourned.